It's the Speed-Climbing.com podcast. This is episode 5, and I have U.S. speed climber Micah Liss. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right, so we actually just got done having a little bit of a session ourselves. Micah was teaching me the intricacies of the Tomoa skip. I am failing miserably. It's fantastic, but it's a learning process. Now, I liked what I saw on the wall for you. I'm really excited for your next season, but let's kind of start a little bit further behind it. Tell me about the season. How'd you feel about it?
Well, last season had some ups and downs. I think overall I'm very happy with where I ended up. Started off on a really strong note at Open Nationals. Climbed third, got my personal record. After that, kind of hit the lowest of lows with not even making finals in team trials, followed by some bad climbing in Salt Lake. But after that, I really focused on my mental game and was able to put it together for Youth Nationals and Youth Worlds, and was able to kind of throw down some close to PR times in those competitions, and I'm feeling really good physically, mentally coming into the next season.
Excellent. So thinking about your climbing at Salt Lake and the team trials, you just said that you've done some mental training essentially. What do you do for that? Like, how do you get your mind right after those competitions?
Well, I think it's important to reflect and learn from what goes wrong. So, after team trials, what I learned going into competition is just trusting my route, trusting my climbing. When I got there and all the doubt floods in, and I think, well, maybe if I do this, maybe if I do that. No, I can't change what I'm doing on the wall. Trying to adjust what I'm doing on Tomoa because it doesn't feel right in the competition wasn't a good idea, and that resulted in slipping on it both qualifier laps. Going into Salt Lake, the first competition, I was just trying to play it safe, hit some times because I was just kind of nervous and felt bad for my last competition and kind of just wanted to get a little stepping stone back into climbing long competitions. But I realized, as we talked about earlier, that you can't just try to go 80% or 90%. It's much better and much more accurate to go 100% or 97%. So, going into the next competition, I tried to pull a little harder, and over the season, I was able to give myself the confidence to just pull hard and move fast up the wall without having any doubts fluttering.
Excellent. So you're able to turn it around and have some good performances towards the end of the season. Now, when did your season end exactly? What was your last competition?
Well, my last competition was Youth Worlds at the end of August. I was able to get 5th in that competition with a couple 6.0s going into false start in the round of 8.
So that was end of August. So now here we are, almost the middle of October. We just had a session, and let me tell you, it's too fast. So tell me about what you've done since that last competition, and what does your training look like going forward?
Well, after that competition, I decided to take a month off to just focus on lifting and letting my body recover. By the end of last season, I was getting nagging tendinitis in my knees and elbows and shoulders. Nothing too bad, but it was impeding my ability to train hard, so I decided that if I needed, to go forward, I needed to allow my body to recover so that I could consistently train hard without being bothered by injuries. Which I think it's really paid off because I was able to just focus on getting stronger, and now that I'm back on the wall, I'm able to just climb without worrying about my joints hurting.
That's something that it can take athletes a long time to realize that it's not worth burning down your forest for one hard workout, like just selling out for it, if that means for the next week you feel tight, terrible, injured, and you're not able to train consistently. Like that consistent training 2-3 times a week is going to yield much better gains than if you say on Monday you feel so good that you bury yourself, and then the rest of the week your training is crap. So for me personally as an athlete, it took me a long time it didn't take me a long time, but it took me until I injured myself pretty severely one season to come to terms with that. So now we got nationals coming up. You are entered to compete?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm competing.
And so I know we discussed a little before we started rolling the camera that the way the speed season is set up, now we've got a gap, and now there's one last competition, and then another gap before team trials, which that's difficult to train around. So tell me a little bit about how you're going into into the national champs, if you wish.
Well, into nationals, I just want to show up with good shape. I want to be consistent. I want to be confident that I am as fast as I need, but I'm not going to, sell out for that competition. I want to think about arcing my season so that I'm prepared at the right times in team trials in Salt Lake is what I'm focusing on. So I decided to give myself 6 weeks on the wall training plus a taper, which I think was enough time to get myself into full shape with being the minimum possible. So right now I'm 3 weeks in. The rust is kind of starting to disappear pretty fast. I'm feeling very explosive. So now I'm just trying to get that consistency back and get my new strength to help me climb faster.
Excellent. So then, once nationals happens, are you going to be taking another short rest before starting training again, or are you just going to roll straight into your training for team trials?
Well, I'm going to have to discuss with my coach, but I think currently the plan is, to go off the wall again for a fairly extended period of time, maybe 4 to 6 weeks, with the hopes also being let the body keep recovering because there's going to be a long season after that. Keep getting stronger, although this time I think I've learned from this last off-the-wall period where I'm going to try to keep some low amount of laps on the wall as well as adding some ladder work just to keep that kind of speed endurance and explosive and athletic feel throughout.
Sure. And just thinking off the top of my head, when it comes to the technical aspect of speed climbing, which for any of you out there, which I know is mostly speed climbers, we're watching this, but the precision needed with each step, with each hold, with each section of the race it's so precise that as you're gaining strength in the off season, I think that by keeping it in there a little bit, it's going to help then as you transition back onto the wall because you won't be so rusty from the timing. So I do like what you're adding into that. So we talked competitions. We talked a little bit about training. Let's talk about a little bit favorite races from this past year as a spectator, as a fan of the sport. What was your favorite competition to watch? What was your favorite races to watch?
Okay. Well, I think my favorite competition to watch is Vilars in person. For getting to watch world record again this year, getting to watch some incredibly fast races, 5.0s, getting to see the Chinese team come out of China for the first time since 2019. There was a lot of anticipation going into the comp, how they were going to be able to do, and it was it lived up to all expectations and surpassed.
I can't even imagine what it'd be like being there in person. Albert Oak had sent me some video of the Chinese national champs from the fall prior. So I had seen what their new top section looked like, and I was like, oh, that's fast. I want to see what it looks like in a competition versus everyone else. And it delivered. It delivered. It was a really good race.
It was amazing. Yeah. And I think that kind of started a little short battle between the Chinese top section and Indonesian, which I think now we know the Chinese top section is won out with all the Indonesian guys switching over.
Mm-hmm. Which I'm just excited for. I mean, you look at Kiramal, and he was on sub-5 pace, and you get rid of reaction time already with his old beta. You look at his finals race where he slips from start through hole 10. He was faster than world record pace. So I'm really excited to see how his beta evolves and how he just kind of comes into the own of that new top beta for next season. I think 4.8 is we're going to see.
Yeah, I was going to say, we've discussed, you add all the sections together, it's an perfect reaction. You could do 4.7, 4.8 is very doable. It was shocking to me that 4 didn't happen. I mean, Kiramal looked like he clearly could have done it with the Indonesian top section. After switching over, it was if he just put together a clean lap, that was going to be it. Even Vedrick, who previously kind of stagnated at 5.2, was pushing for sub-5 in that competition.
I'm really happy that Vedrick kind of has this little resurgence going on, because after he did his 5.2, he kind of even fell back when he was just living in those 5.3s. That wasn't really hitting the 5.2s in competitions. And then we're at Jakarta. I was there personally. No, but we're at Jakarta, and boom, he's just 5.0s, like living in that area where you see every run, it's that potential. He's going to be under 5.1.
Yeah, and Vedrick, like, to me, gets underrated nowadays with, you know, Jinbao and Kiramal kind of being a little bit faster looking, but he, for a period, was absolutely unstoppable. I think he went from COVID all the way through without losing one cup all the way, you know, through Salt Lake.
And look at, like, from a pure consistency standpoint.
Yeah.
I know we were just talking about consistency. Anytime he's on the wall, like, you don't think that a slip's going to happen.
Right.
Like, you trust that his race is going to be pretty clean.
Yeah. He's just older and more mature, and his consistency is rock solid. He would just bang out 5.4s, 5.3s all day. But now it could be 5.0, 5.1 all day, and there's maybe 2 people who could beat that. So I'm thinking it's possible for Vedrick three-peat in terms of world championship status with the points. Yeah.
Oh, you hear the prediction.
He's got already 2 years in a row, and next year, if he's going as well as he does this year, those medals are just going to keep coming.
All right. So obviously we've talked about the favorites, dark horses. Who do you think is going to rise up? Who do you think is going to hit big PRs and all of a sudden start themselves on the international scene in a bigger way? Aside from you.
Yeah, aside from myself. Well, I'm looking for the U.S. to keep pushing. I think for both guys and girls, we have a lot of young people who are, you know, kind of competitive and pushing each other to keep going. Of course, Sam had a breakout year, looking for him to keep going with that. John, I'm not sure if he's switching beta or anything, but even with Indonesian beta, 5.1, 5.0 is looking really good. And as he gets more and more consistent every year, he's becoming a super, super competitive climber. I think shout out to Richard, who has so much potential to be just as fast as anyone in the country or the world. I think that's going to be going very well very soon for him.
Excellent. So with you don't have to talk about this because I know you're going to the nationals. Do you have anything that you're tweaking in your beta leading up to it, or is this, you know, like industry hush secret?
I think I'm ready to come forward with the beta changes. There's been a little radio silence in the U.S. recently. I suspect there's been some changing of beta. So, you know, of course, going from last year, the whole year I was just waiting for a moment to switch my one arm from using the left hold to just matching like most people are doing now, which I think is instantly kind of straighter line, puts you in a better position. And up top, I'm switching my foot position from the foot chip to the ball, lower foot, which I think those 2 changes alone is saving me like at least a tenth or 2 already, and I'm still like just getting going with it. So obviously the mashing keeps you straighter, and it also kind of impacts because you can release with both hands and hit the bump very fast, which I think helps even more than just the straighter line. And then the low foot compared to the high foot, I was a little skeptical, but now I really believe in that. I think you get in a position where you can kind of have your leg hit it at a 45-degree angle or something, and instead of just kind of cruising through the top 3, I feel like right when I hit that hold, I'm able to explode through the top 3 and even reach highest speed of the whole route.
Excellent. Now we had talked about that earlier. We were discussing like, you know, the angle, like at that 45-degree, like 45, maybe like up close to maybe 90-degree, like that knee bend. Like that is where your leg is going to be the most powerful. It's where you're going to be able to apply the force the fastest. So like that's great. If you are feeling that during that, to me, that tells me that's optimal for you. So I'm excited to see what you do in the competition. I won't say the time that he hit in this practice run, but just seeing what he was able to do, I'm very optimistic for nationals for you. So let's dive into a little bit more nitty-gritty, like off-the-wall style training.
Sure.
When you are done with nationals and you're hopping off the wall for a little bit, what does your off-the-wall training look like from a strength and conditioning standpoint?
Yeah, well, I work with a really, really good coach, Jacob Ross, who is tagged in a lot of my Instagram.
Feel free to plug his social now, too.
It's like at Jacob W. Ross on Instagram. Find it all over my page. He comes from a powerlifting background and strongman and stuff like that, like lifting sports. So he kind of helps me with my programming a lot and writes it all out for me. So in the off season, I'm focusing a lot on like heavy lifting, barbell movements. So, you know, for lower body, I'm focusing on deadlifts and squats. For upper body, I'm focusing on like rows and pull-ups. So generally, I have like 3 or 4 supersets that I rotate through. We start off every workout with what we call like prehab. So just kind of trying to stay on top of my joints so that I can fight off the injuries before they come. Keep strengthening my elbows and knees and shoulders and stuff like that. Then it goes into 2 sets roughly of kind of heavy movements. That could be, as mentioned before, squats, deadlifts, Bulgarian split squats, pull-ups, rows, lat pull-down, any of the above, and then usually ending with some like accessories like bicep curls, overhead extension, jumping movements are incorporated into my leg days a lot.
And then how many days per week are you doing those off-the-wall sessions? And then are they split up? Are you working specific like body parts where like today's a lower body day, next day is upper body day, or are you kind of like conjugating that where you're going to have a couple lower body, couple upper body, and then having maybe like another day or 2 of rest in between the next session?
Yeah. Well, in the off season and in the kind of more 50-50 on the wall, off the wall type of time, I'm doing 2 upper body, 2 lower body, so it goes upper lower. So yeah, I can push really hard and have a little extra rest. But when I'm getting into a lot of climbing like I am now, we find that I can recover better if we kind of even out the workload a little bit. So I'll have full body, upper body, lower body. So that these first couple days of the week, I'm able to not feel like one part of my body's tired going into that next workout. So like that kind of feeds into the kind of on the wall philosophy. I like to kind of rotate stuff, so I can overload like one section and then let that rest a little bit, and then come back and hit it again. Stuff like that.
Excellent. So then once you're getting back on the wall, what does your session kind of look like? Are you hitting the wall and then doing additional like complementary work and then hitting weights, or like how does your session get broken up?
So, well, this is kind of influenced both by my coach and talking to the Indonesians. Their coach Hendra was like super honest about what they were doing. He didn't hide anything, which was great. So, according to what they do, I do a lot of sections. So each week, out of my 4 training sessions, generally 3 are dedicated to sections, and that will be like 1 section per week. So it could be start section, middle section, top section, and then the first day of the week is going to be like a full lap day. So I also throw in 2 days of second session work, like on Tuesday and Thursday when I have extra rest. So that session's like a micro session of like 30 to 45 minutes on the wall, where I'm focusing on something like specific. Could be like just having like a little beta lab, because I'm already kind of dialed from the morning, so it's easy to really jump into the fine tuning. Or it could be like kind of speed endurance focus, and I feel that in the afternoon I'm able to perform super well for a short period, and then I can just take the rest and then go hit the weights.
Awesome. So you mentioned that the Indonesians kind of they block their training when it comes to the specific sections of the wall. So that's interesting to me from a motor learning standpoint. So if you look at like motor learning theory, like how quickly people can learn a new movement and a new task, they find that you get the quickest acquisition if you block that training, where you do the same movements over and over in order to learn it. But then you also find that long-term wise, people can come back to movements better if you randomize it. So like maybe working the Tomoa for a couple, and then you're going to switch to a different section, and then you're going to do a different section in the same session. Right. But only doing that after you already have those basic motor patterns down. And so that's interesting to me, because that's going to be something that I'm going to be building into my training now that I'm actually going to be having access to this wall, because membership, baby.
Yeah.
Turns out it wasn't that long of a drive for me as I thought it was. So using block sessions in order to build competency and the skill within the sections, and once that skill is built, switching to random so that you can ingrain it, and that way when you're on the wall, if something happens or all of a sudden you have to adapt to a slip, etc., your brain's more plastic in order to handle that, according to motor learning research. So that's kind of the way that I would like to play.
I do actually incorporate that. At first, like when I was doing the kind of pure Indonesian method, I found it to be really great, but also the kind of repetition, that meant I could really lock in one section, but also could lead to some stagnation. So what I kind of do is the first day is kind of a pure just doing that section. It's kind of the intro to that section of that week. And then the second day, I incorporate some bands and some weights to kind of change the stimulus a little bit. So, that will usually look like I'll do the section with weight, and then directly afterwards I'll do it without weight, and then I'll rest, and then I'll do it with a band, and then directly afterwards I'll do it without a band. And then the third day generally is random sections action.
Okay.
Like I will just put 1 through 3 on a random number generator, hit it, go do it, hit it, go do it. And that way, I feel like it's kind of mental preparation, because I'm not just getting used to something as I was previously, which I think is valuable in its own way. I can just have to be able to adapt on the fly, like I will, in a competition under stressful circumstances.
All right. So I like what you mentioned about, doing weights, using bands, etc. So essentially doing that contrast method of strength and power development. So have you ever done or heard of the French contrast?
I've heard a little bit about that from Piper.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
but that's I know very little.
So that's more of an advanced training method, and that is definitely something that you only want to use when you already have. You've already been diving deep into strength and power, and now you're looking for something to kind of take you to that next level. And it's going to be using a heavy exercise. Usually it's broken up into like a 4 exercise complex, where it's going to be a heavy weighted exercise, an explosive plyometric, a different heavy weighted exercise, a resist exercise, and then another explosive plyometric. So one way that you can do that with upper body is like, weighted pull-up, band pull. Then into like a heavy seated row, followed by a well, one thing I like to do is like overload the eccentric. So like if you have a pull-up ladder, starting at the top and then letting yourself go, and then catching yourself quickly for that quick eccentric. So stuff that's going to be a little bit longer and slower to really work on recruiting those muscle fibers. And then you do the faster one to work on the rate coding. So how quickly like your brain's your central nervous system's activating those muscles. Yeah. So that way you're shifting your force velocity curve, like you're really just shifting how rapidly and how forcefully your body can create force. And it is a very high intense exercise. So you really can only do that when your body is prepared for that. Yeah. But it's such a great way to take yourself, like say, you've got 4 weeks before nationals, you can do a 3-week hard block of training, give yourself a 1-week taper. That's a great way to add that in if your training age is high. That's not something like a 16, 17, 18-year-old really should do, because you can still develop very well using basic strength and conditioning methods. But once you start getting older and you can really focus more on those more advanced methods, it can make a world of difference on how quickly you can attack.
Well, I think it's kind of integrated into my training a little bit. Like, for example, I'll do like some split squats, and then I'll do single leg jumps, or I'll do some deadlifts, and then immediately jumping exercises like, could be box jump, could be just squat jump, or just normal, jumping height with knee lifting and stuff. For the upper body days, a lot of times I'll do, like a weighted pull up or a lat pull down, and then I'll go into like dumbbell power snatch or something like that.
Excellent. So I know we talked about my training, we talked about last season. Let's talk about this coming season. Team trials are March.
Yeah, date unannounced.
Date unannounced. So is that annoying when you have only a rough time frame to build your training around? Because I was very particular, like the dates for nationals were always announced, in track and field at least a year prior. So you can count back your training and build your training blocks. And I was so nuanced with mine, I needed that. Yeah. Is it annoying?
Yeah, it is a little bit annoying. I mean, hopefully by the time Open Nationals is done, that will be there. Because I want to be able to say, like, I want 12 weeks on the wall plus the week taper. And that means I get 6 weeks off the wall, 3 weeks off the wall, 4 weeks off the wall. Mm-hmm. And then I can plan what I'm doing off the wall according to that. So, if I don't know whether it's going to be the first week of March or last week of March, maybe I end up coming off the wall and then I realize, no, I should be on the wall or the other way around. So, the earlier it gets announced, the more concrete plans I do with it.
So, do you have anything that you want to talk about? Like anything that you want to bring up, anything that's like near and dear to your heart that we just need to speak about?
Well, I don't know. Put me on the spot. But I think, you know, we can go into all this training stuff, but I think the most important thing for anybody is to do what they can do consistently and what makes them want to train hard. You know, if you can't get out of bed to go do sections, don't do sections. Whatever, you know, it's like the best diet plan is the diet plan you'll do. The best training plan is the training plan you'll do. You know, so you can incorporate all sorts of ideas if that excites you, but at the end of the day, whatever's going to help you train the hardest, that's going to be the plan that yields the best results.
I love that. The personal buy-in is so important, especially in speed climbing, where some people have teams and groups that they train with. Some people train solo, and especially if you are a solo person, if you don't have buy-in with exactly what you're doing, it is so hard, like you said, to get out of bed and do the stuff that you don't want to do. People that are on a team have a little bit of an advantage because you always have that I don't want to disappoint my team mentality. But for any of you training solo out there, like I did that. It's not fun.
Yeah, I'm doing that right now, and I kind of have to just mentally reframe, you know, to tell myself I'm doing this for myself, hold myself accountable. I'm going to the gym this morning because I want to. But I also think that's kind of a difference between the U.S. and a lot of other countries, is that we aren't centralized in a location, whereas almost every other country that I know of, all their athletes are training together and pushing each other. And that makes a big difference. You know, here in the U.S. we're pushing each other because we'll post our PR on the Instagram, but it's not on that daily basis. That, you know, if you're in Indonesia, racing in a World Cup's nothing because you raced a guy who can do 5.2 every day of training. Now that you're racing a guy who can do 5.4 or 5.2 or 5.1, that's second nature. That's what something you're used to. Whereas I think you'll see sometimes in the U.S. are guys who are just as fast as anybody else because they don't have experience racing it. Sometimes that's less comfortable.
Well, that is one thing that you see with a lot of different teams in Olympic sports outside of the U.S. with national governing bodies or national governing organizations that actually provide monetary resources to their athletes.
Yeah.
Where, you know, whether it's, you know, UK, Indonesia, China, etc. Like when you put even a base amount of money into the sport to allow the athletes to live and maybe not need a full-time job so they can train more and focus on that, and then you provide that sort of team atmosphere, a team training center that everyone trains at, and it's an expectation that you're there, you do develop those it's an advantage. It's 100% advantage compared to what you see in the U.S.
Yeah, we had that 1 week here in Salt Lake, which was like, it was great for everybody. Training together, there were IPR'd, Merit PR'd, Piper PR'd. A lot of, you know, people were throwing down close to personal record times, discussing all our training ideas together, kind of on the fly, was something that was super, super valuable. And if that could happen even just a couple times a year, I think the team would really benefit from that.
Excellent. All right. I'm not gonna lie, my brain is cached in the very long session that we just did. But is there anyone you want to give shouts out to, or anyone you want to?
Well, I just can shout out my coach, Jacob, this gym versus St. Arlington Heights, which is amazing. Gym in Nashville, Climb Nashville. And shout out to Micah Feller for working hard recently and getting down to 6.3. More PRs coming this weekend, I'm sure.
Excellent. So yeah, as you mentioned, we are in First Ascent Arlington Heights. This was my first time here, and I fell in love with this gym, so I will be coming back here quite frequently. And I just look forward to running into you when you're home from college, and if we can get some more sessions in the future.
Yeah, I would love to.
Excellent. So again, Speed-Climbing.com. This has been Micah Liss. It will continue to be Micah Liss when he leaves here, but always excited to have US Speed Climbers on here. Look forward to our next episode. Don't know who's going to be on here yet, but
we got some ideas.
So we're really looking forward to this off season. Got some good content ideas as well. So, all right.
Stay tuned. Thank you.